Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this week's edition of the RDA Central West Business Leaders Breakfast. And this morning we're joining you from Coulton, and I'm excited to be joined by the Federal Member for Parks, Minister for Regional Communications, Regional Health and Local Government, Mark Coulton. Welcome to breakfast.
Morning, Sam. Great to be here.
Yeah, really glad you're able to make the time to join us this morning, and I'm excited to learn a little bit more about, I guess, your journey, political journey, and your electorate this morning, because I think it's going to really be an engaging and enlightening chat for our regular viewers. But Mark, you were first elected as the Member for Parks in 2007. It's one of the biggest electorates in Australia. You're a former farmer, a former mayor, and can you just tell our viewers a little bit about your journey to become a federal MP and a little bit about your electorate?
Okay, so I've always lived either at Gravesend or Warriolda or up in the northern part of my electorate all my life, and my family are all there. My family's always been actively involved in local organisations. I'm a life member of the local Apex Club, was entitled with the Show Society, the Bushfire Brigade, other organisations. And so it's probably not a surprise that in 2004, when there was a round of state government amalgamations, that I got interested. And the Gwydir and Yelleroy, Bingra and a northern part of Barraba Shires were amalgamated to form Gwydir Shire. And at that stage I was living in the northern part of the Shire and concerned that maybe that part would not be represented as it should be. So I threw my hat into the ring. I subsequently got elected onto the council, and at my very first council meeting came home as mayor. And so that was, I guess, going into the deep end. I think the advantage I had was that I didn't have any past history in that organisation, and it was a life-changing moment. I thoroughly enjoyed local government. I tell people it's probably the best job I've ever had, being Mayor of Gwydir.
What's the best lesson you learnt being a local mayor, or being thrown in the deep end, as you said?
I think the best lesson is that local leadership counts. I deal with a lot of local governments now as the local government minister, and you can see a real dynamic, a real positivity in a community if the council is cohesive and the mayor who's speaking for the council is always on the positives. The easiest game in town is to point out negatives. But I think being positive, I think in the second year of being Gwydir, we won the Blewett Award for excellence in local government. We were number 3 on the Smart Investor magazine Places to Invest, Gwydir Council, only on the basis of the information we were putting out being positive. And so I think local leadership is important. Local government's the closest to the people, and I think that sometimes local government councillors and mayors probably don't realise the influence and the power that they really have.
Yeah, I think that's an absolutely true comment, and I know in the Central West and probably in your electorate there's some fantastic local leaders, and especially going through the recent challenges of COVID, there's been a lot of pressure put on all elected members of all layers of government, local, state and federal. There's been a number of stimulus measures that have been announced in recent months to support business and the community. In your travels across a large swath of regional New South Wales, what feedback are you getting from local business about the different stimulus measures? I guess which ones have been received well, and what can you foresee coming down the pipeline in the near future?
Look, the stimulus has been quite broad. Obviously the JobKeeper one where people manage to keep their relationship with their employer is important, because when things pick up again, obviously those organisations need those staff to get back into full production. That's been, I think, probably very well received. The Job Seeker, which is the renaming of New Start, being doubled, obviously well received in some. Bit of criticism on that one, because there was a feeling that some people whose lives actually hadn't changed got extra money for this. But the idea of that was to have that money was to go back through the local businesses, because generally the cohort of people on the Job Seeker program are likely to be spending money and not putting it away, and we needed to have a financial stimulus. But now, sort of as we're coming through it now, there's a lot of interest in the instant asset write-off. Farmers have had a pretty tough year, but they can see now that they're looking at a big turnaround in the season, and so my office has been dealing with a lot of businesses on the $150,000 instant asset write-off, and there was a concern about it stopping on the 30th of June, which was this week, because a lot of what wanted to be purchased is held up because of coronavirus, and so when the Treasurer extended that to the end of the year, I think that was a very positive move. There's a couple of other programs that are not as well known, but I think very useful for business, and one of them is for small to medium enterprises with a turnover up to $50 million, a partnership between the Commonwealth and their lender. So the Commonwealth underpins 50% of the loan, the lender does the other. They're unsecured loans to enable businesses to have some cash flow over 3 years, and I think maybe more people need to know about that one. And then there's another one for larger amounts for capital purchases that can be written off over 2 years instead of the original sort of 15 or so for larger purchases in excess of $150,000. So my belief is always we should be using the federal government to have incentive to encourage people to help themselves and not sort of the other way around. So I think people have been pretty happy with our response, but quite frankly, we've got a way to go, and how we come out of this will be the real test, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And the feedback that we've got at RDA Central West has been, it's been those immediate stimulus support measures that have allowed businesses to keep the doors open. Key ticking over has been absolutely vital. And as you said, now that I guess we've been through the immediate here and now of COVID, it's kind of where to from here. And I know one of the things that's raised with us is supporting, I guess, the construction industry. Construction has a fantastic economic multiplier, supports local business, great for suppliers and local tradies. And I guess in that front, there's been a couple of good announcements in recent weeks. One of them that's been announced was the Building Better Regions Fund, and I know there were some great projects, even just here in Condo and around. Can you give our viewers a bit of an update, I guess, of some of those BBRF projects that have been announced? And just flowing on from that, I guess the importance of those small to medium infrastructure projects to supporting local business right now.
Yeah, thanks, Sam. So we're here at Lachlan Shire, and I'm speaking to you now. And so some of the projects we've funded here are to the tourism precinct that Condo are putting together here, with the utes on the paddock have been moved in to the edge of town, and the Jockeys Memorial's under construction, and there is plans for a tourist information centre and walking trails, and I think that's going to be a real focal point for Condobolin. And so the money that we've put into that is to create ongoing stimulus to the community. We're going to Lake Ageligo and looking at the pool there, an upgrade to the pool. Obviously you need to maintain the amenity of small towns so that people actually want to stay and live there. There's the precinct at Ward Oval in Cobar, $6.5 million there to provide once again a hub and environment where people actually want to stay and live in these towns. And so right across this week I've been in Nyngan. They've got a grant to extend their medical centre for more consulting rooms. That was a partnership between the Commonwealth and Nyngan Bogan Council a few years ago, working incredibly well. They now understand they need to have a broader range of services for allied health and other services into that medical centre. So right across the electorate we've had programs like that. Gilgandra, the program they're going to do up the library in the middle of their town to they've just had the blow of losing Target this year, so they want to make sure that they're maintaining the viability of their main street. So they're the sort of programs that where we're helping the local people. The government's not coming in and saying, here you are, you need this. All these programs are at the request of the local community.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right. And I know in the program BBRF in the last round there was a focus on drought impacted communities, and I know from anecdotal feedback that we've got at RDA that was really well received. And I think those communities, as you've said, and with your experience as a farmer and your history in federal parliament, they've been doing it tough, and it's probably a nice way to support some of those local businesses that and we all know this, in country towns, they get tapped on the shoulder every week for sponsorship and support and different things.
Yeah.
So if we're able to support those businesses in different stimulus measures and local projects, it's very well received. And I guess that probably dovetails nicely into one of my questions around your ministerial responsibilities.
Yeah.
You touched on it at the top of the interview. You're a former mayor and you've got a long history in local government. As local government minister, what's some of the feedback that you've been receiving from the different local governments as they go through this challenging time? And the second part of my question is, I know there was a great announcement with the local local community infrastructure and local roads project. I guess, where's that up to? And can you give our viewers and the local government leaders that might be tuning in a bit of an update?
Well, Sam, what's been interesting is that the 537 local government areas around Australia, and the ones that I'm very proud of that have managed this have been the rural and regional ones. They've redeployed staff into Meals on Wheels delivery and really knuckled down in support of their community. Some of the larger councils that normally have massive cash flows because they're in a city area, with parking and licensing for street dining and a whole real estate that they own, a whole range of other sources of income that, quite frankly, have been the envy over the years of regional councils. They were the first ones to really get into trouble because their cash flow was severely hampered. And I think what's come out of this is that regional Australia, I think there's going to be a reshift in how it's perceived, and so that's why the federal government goes to local council at times like this. So the latest Roads and Community Infrastructure Fund is quite broad. The council's received the guidelines this week, and it can be from putting money into roads. It can be community infrastructure that maybe in some of the city areas they might want to put it in job creation programs that will help create employment. Other areas I put in roads, but basically it's to stimulate the local economy. There's an element of local procurement in that, and so that follows on with the. For instance, in my electorate, every council's received 2 payments of $1 million each for the Drought Communities program. There's been some great work done in there. Money has gone into the bushfire areas from the federal government because we see local government as a valued partner of the Commonwealth because they tick the box of the individuality that's needed for every community, and that's why we do go to local government because of that. That connection that they have with their local community. Yeah,
I think you're right on the point there, because local government, it's the first interface of government for a lot of people, and as you said earlier in the interview, it's often referred to as the hardest level of government because there's high expectations from the community that you can tick off all their concerns and issues. And I guess now I've seen in a lot of the councils they're bringing forward their infrastructure budgets to stimulate those local projects, generate economic activity in their communities, which is fantastic. I kind of guess it leads into my next question, and it's something you touched on there. There could be some real positive opportunities for regional Australia with as we come out of COVID. There looks to be changes in work practices and people's behaviours. But one of the key pillars, I guess, that will help facilitate that move and help people change their mindset is connectivity. It's one that was relied on heavily during COVID. I don't reckon I've ever done so many video calls, and you yourself have probably done much the same. But can you give our viewers a bit of an update, I guess, on some of the levers the federal government has at their disposal to help support better connectivity, mobile black spots and NBN rollout? Because I think that'd be of interest.
Okay, so look, on broadband, I think we've come through. I think the NBN actually held up much better than was expected. I've got a Sky Muster satellite connection, so I worked at home for 10 weeks. I did, one night I had 184 rural doctors on a webinar, all on my satellite connection. When I'm at home, all my phone calls go through the Wi-Fi calling on the satellite, and so a lot of the misconceptions that earlier versions of satellite connectivity gave the bush, I think, were laid to rest, and so I think that does help. I think we've still got an issue because there's a lot of people are relying on the phone network for their connectivity. And I'm still imploring people, get the satellite for your home, because if you want the iPad to work in the tractor better, it would be better if the people were not watching Netflix on the phone tower. It's a bit of a hard call to get through because some of the telcos don't sell satellite connections, and so they're not telling people about this. But also, you know, we've just had the fifth round of the Black Spot program, so we've funded just I think about 1,250 towers on that. There's about 850 of those operational, which have made a big difference. But we've now got sort of round 5A and round 6 that have been funded, but we're working on a different design because there's about 100,000 people in Australia that don't have a mobile phone connection. And so the telcos have got to a point where they've said even with the subsidy it doesn't work for us. And so we now are looking at some innovative methods of connectivity to get into those harder to deliver areas, and we're looking at technology that's been very successful in New Zealand. So in round 5A, for a better word, we are looking at 3 components. We're putting more resources into bushfire prone areas, more resources on highway linkages, but the third component is we're looking at innovative models of telecommunications. And in round 5 we actually funded a couple of towers with a third party that wasn't a major telco, so they're looking at delivering high-speed broadband in conjunction with a telco on a third-party owned tower. And so there's a company now operating in the northwest, my electorate at Moree, and they're bouncing very high-capacity broadband from the top of grain silos over a large area, basically from Cropper Creek right out to Mungundai and the township of Moree itself. And so we're looking at how we can go to fill in those gaps, because having connectivity is not a luxury. And one of the misconceptions, Sam, is that there's this idea that the country lags. When it comes to connectivity and technology, we're in front. You know, I was at a farm last week where they're actually using drones now to spot spray weeds. 20 litre capacity of chemical on a drone. They map the paddock at a fraction of the cost. The drone costs $40,000 instead of the spray rig, you know, several $100,000, and a smaller amount of targeted chemical. And so all these things do need a level of connectivity. And so we're looking to match what's actually needed. And if the telcos doesn't really suit their model, well, so be it. We're going to target the direction of what needs to happen to make sure that all of Australia gets the connectivity they deserve.
Yeah, absolutely. And talking about ag, there's the technological advancements in ag are mind-blowing, and I think it's on a trajectory that's going to continue to gain pace. And I think with the focus of the federal government dovetailing with the focus of the New South Wales state government, I think regional connectivity is front of mind, which is fantastic. Yeah. And I think in time that's going to help facilitate a greater opportunity in regional communities to bring people, bring their family and bring their skills into our region.
And just to finish on that, Sam, another thing we've funded is an information hub, for a better word. So what frustrates me now is quite often people are languishing with second rate. There's an issue they've got, and they just assume that it's a problem with the network, it's the government's fault, and quite often the problem is very solvable for very little money. Sometimes it's even been given a dodgy modem, and there's an assumption that that's the level of service that you have. So we want to inform people of and give them a facility where they can make a call or whatever and talk to someone that can maybe go through their issues and solve the problems they've got with the technology we have. Sometimes you don't need to put an extra phone tower up, you just need to make sure that the technology in your home or office is suitable.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's the digital connectivity hub that Minister Coulton's been talking about this morning. We might put a link up to the communications website after our chat. So if people are interested for a little bit more information about that resource that's under development, I think that'll be fantastic. Now we're going to change tact a little bit. This is my favourite element of every week's chat. It's Fast Five. It's where our regular viewers know this section. It's where we get to know a little bit more about our special guest. Yeah. And I guess, Mark, the first question for you is, have you got any hidden talents or hobbies that your constituents or our regular viewers might not be aware of?
Actually, without wanting to sound too much like Forrest Gump, my favourite hobby is mowing the lawn.
I thought you were going to say table tennis.
No, I have met an American president too, by the way, so Forrest and I align on a few levels, but...
I'm going to leave it there, because if we start delving into that sequence in the movie, it could end badly.
But Robin and I have got Robin looks after the flowers and the roses, and I look after the lawn, and I find that is a very therapeutic thing to do when I'm home, and some people are surprised that one of my favourite things to do is mowing the lawn.
Big question, what kind of mower do you have?
I have a very good mower. It does 22 kilometres an hour when it's actually a Kubota, with a 5-foot cut, and it's a beauty.
Well, that's an endorsement for Kubota out there for all of our regular viewers. Now, if someone was to play you in a movie of your life, who do you think could do the role justice?
Look, this is impossible, Sam. A movie of my life would not be a big seller, and probably
straight to DVD. You reckon?
Probably, and it would be used, by insomniacs all over the world, I'm sure. But if I was going to have a little bit of poetic license, I'd love John Wayne to play it, because then someone might watch it. But no, movies of my life I don't think would be big sellers.
I think you're underselling yourself there. Now, hidden gem of the Central West or the broader Parks electorate? If you're trying to bring visitors out here or just unearth a little gem, it could be a person, a place or a venue.
Look, without doubt, the hidden gem of the Central West is Lake Cargelligo. Without a doubt. It is sunrise at Lake Cargelligo is one of the most magnificent places you could possibly be. And I think that because it's not on a major thoroughfare, a lot of people miss it when they're travelling around. But across my electorate, I think probably the other hidden gem that I think is incredibly special is the Brewarrina fish traps. It's one of the oldest man-made structures on Earth. It predates the pyramids. There's a cultural centre there. Young fellow up there who is absolutely spot on with the history lesson in the cultural centre. And so, if I would encourage anyone to go and have a look at the fish traps, and then go to the cultural centre and look at some of the ancient history of this area.
Okay, well, we'll put the Brewarrina fish traps link up on the Facebook page after this morning's chat, and we'll nice shout out to Shane Phillips and all the team out there at Lake Cargelligo. They're doing fantastic work. Top annual event or tourism offering across your electorate?
That's really difficult, because my area generally have localised ones, so we've sort of got the local shows. Broken Hill has the Broken Hill Festival where they run trainloads out from the city, but it does bring a lot of people in from tourism. But in my own home little town of Warialda, the Honey Festival and things like that, and every town has one of those that the local community roll up their sleeves and get involved in. But I think the COVID's knocked things around. Narromine wanted to have a Dolly Parton festival. Cobar last year had the Grey Mardi Gras, of which the Commonwealth did contribute a bit. So I think the idea of that, people look over the fence at what Parks has done with Elvis, and down the road from where we are now at Trundle with the ABBA Festival, and they have been really standouts of what a local community can build basically from scratch. And so I actually think there's a bit of a look around of someone looking for their own special thing like that, because there seems to be a market for them. Yeah,
and look, I think with the COVID restrictions, international travel is going to be on the back burner for some time, so there could be a real opportunity for regional visits, especially with that suite of different opportunities and offerings that are out there. I know Condobolin have their Condo Cook-Off every year, which is a great one to pencil in your calendar. But I think I know the answer to this one, but your top band or artist?
Look, I'm a great Slim Dusty fan. I have been trying for some years to make the 13th of June a national holiday to commemorate Slim's birthday. And my staff...
What's your top Slim Dusty fun fact that people might not know about the Mayor?
Well, it's Lights on the Hill. One of the favourite songs was written by his wife, Joy McKean, and she formulated that song while she was towing a caravan up the Moonbi Range from Tamworth up towards Armidale. And so I think when if you've ever driven that road and you listen to Joy's words, you can understand how she came up with it. So, no, what I like about Slim Dusty was that, you know, his first ever hit Rainfalls tumbles down in July 1947, I think, and it's still just as listenable today as it was then. He went out, and the Aboriginal communities across Australia adored him because he was the one that travelled out there, and so I've really got a soft spot.
Well, my top Slim Dusty hit, Looking Forward, Looking Back, but I'm not going to do a rendition, so we'll move on.
No, I've already got a Slim Dusty song penciled in for my funeral if anyone happens to be there. So.
It's a bit morbid. We'll get on to the next question. Being the federal MP for Parks, it's an electorate that is some 400,000 square kilometres, and I think it's bigger than Germany and 1.5 times the size of New Zealand.
Yes.
So I'm assuming that throws up a couple of challenges.
Yeah.
What would be your proudest achievement as an MP? And your biggest disappointment over your journey?
Look, there's a few. I think the Inland Rail is probably the proudest one. It's under construction now. It's in the very first speech I made to the Australian Parliament in February 2008, I mentioned the reason I went to Canberra was to make sure the Inland Rail was constructed.
And I think you said a lack of infrastructure is a major impediment to our development. There are 2 projects that are essential to ensure continued progress in my electorate. They are construction of the expressway over the Blue Mountains and the Melbourne to Brisbane rail line.
Yeah, and I think there's obviously still an issue with the Central West having access into Sydney along that road. But despite the fact there's been lots of money spent on it, but no, the Inland Rail. But I think one that's close to my heart is the Western New South Wales Cancer Centre. So Dougal Saunders and I were there a couple of weeks ago looking at the concrete pour. It'll be open at the end of next year. And I lost my mother to cancer at the age of 67. And I understand what it's like for someone that lives a long way away from a capital city getting treatment. And so when that centre is completed at Dubbo, people from Western New South Wales will be able to have life-saving diagnosis and treatment within their own community or within easy reach of their own community. And a lot of people in Western New South Wales, Sam, have never been to Sydney. Can you imagine getting a cancer diagnosis, sent to Sydney on a plane, getting off at Sydney Airport on an afternoon, having to find yourself to a hospital in the city? Some people, that's worse than the disease. And so I guess they're my 2, but I'll be particularly proud of the day that the doors open for that cancer centre in Dubbo. Yeah,
it's a fantastic resource for Western New South Wales, and I think it's something you spoke to me about off air at a previous time was, exactly right. People that get that diagnosis in Bourke having to travel all the way to Sydney to get treatment. At least now they can stay relatively, still not close in the scheme of things, but a bit closer to family and those support structures. And in those challenging times, that's absolutely vital.
And now, with the Murray-Darling Medical School, we'll be able to train local people as students, medical students in Dubbo, and their specialty. So we'll be able to train oncologists in Dubbo to service the Western region, or any other specialty for that matter. And so I think there's 3 things, you mentioned one of them, 3 things that people look at when they want to relocate. They want connectivity, they want to know what the education facilities for their kids are like, and then they want to know what the medical facilities are like. They're the 3 ones that if we want people to relocate and live where we do in regional Australia, we've got to make sure that we get that right.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know my wife and I moved to Orange, semi-recently, and I know the health aspect, because we were expecting our first child, was something that definitely was front and centre for us.
Yeah.
And I guess it probably leads into my next question. You're also Minister for Regional Health. And I believe one of the a bill just recently passed a Parliament to extend the Rural Health Commissioner's tenure.
Yeah.
Do you mind giving our viewers a little bit of an update on why the Rural Health Commissioner, I guess, was established, the remit, and some of the wins that position has delivered?
So we've actually extended the role, not the Commissioner themselves. So Professor Paul Worley was the first Commissioner, and he was appointed in 2007. Professor Worley has done a magnificent body of work around allied health. He did a lot of work in bringing together the different colleges for the generalist pathway. So they're doctors that have a broader range of skills that make them suitable to work in regional Australia. And so very proud, was unanimous support from everyone in both houses. I'll take that as great support. And so the new Health Commissioner will have a slightly different role that will be more implementation orientated. So a lot of the programs that we've now started to make sure that they keep on track, they will be assisted by 2 assistant commissioners with skills in nursing, allied health and Indigenous health. And so their job every day is to make sure that the policies that we've enacted, any roadblocks are taken out because we graduate 7,000 medical students a year in this country. At the moment, we've got 30% vacancy in general practice across the country, not just in the regions. And so we're looking at innovative models that make coming to regional a positive for your career. And where we are just south of us now, there's the Murrumbidgee model, innovative employment model, which is a partnership between the state, the Commonwealth and the local practitioners there to provide support and employment around registrars coming through, because it's not the job that people don't want to come and do. And I'd like to emphasise this. In the regions, we have got to talk about the positives. If you're a medical graduate in the city and people, all they hear about is a health crisis, they see photos of dry rivers, dead fish, drought, bushfires, you're only attracting the hardy souls that want to challenge. Whereas the reality is you can have a very rewarding career servicing communities that actually appreciate what you do for them and have a lifestyle that's actually much more beneficial for your family than it was if you stayed in a city area. And so we've got to turn around the dialogue about moving to the bush. You're moving to the bush because it's going to be a good thing for you to do, not because we're in some sort of crisis and we need your help.
Yeah, I think that's absolutely right, and it's about showcasing some of those positive stories. And I think the positivity was one of the first comments you made about being a local leader, is taking a positive mindset. We've got such a fantastic events, opportunities, Lake Kajelico to the west of us here, those different events, opportunities in parks, and I think you're right. And I'm just going to go back one step, and it's something you just said a touch earlier was the Murray-Darling Medical School. I think that's going to be a transformational project when it's finished, because, and you might be able to just add a bit of comments here, but I believe if you're taught in the regions, the studies show that you're more likely to stay in the regions, and I'm assuming that's because you meet your future husband or wife, and I think that could really be a turning point for that training. Yeah,
look, next year the campus at Orange for CSU is under construction, so it'll be one of the first universities to take enrolments in the beginning of 2021. And that you are right, because it's such a long path to be fully qualified. It's 10 years or more. And so medical training coincides with other important life choices. And so we've got to make it so that local people can train in their local area rather than have to move away. And then you're at that age where you're looking for, not looking, but you find your life partner. With the feminisation of the workforce now, in medical workforce there's a much higher proportion of females to males. You're at the age where you want to start your family, and so if you can do all of that and you're still surrounded by the support structures of your local community and your extended family, it's much easier than if you have to go off to a capital city and basically start from scratch. Yeah,
agree 100%. Now we're coming up to the end of our chat for this morning, so thanks for your time, Mark. But a couple of questions to finish off. It's been an unprecedented period this first half of 2020. What would be one of your bold predictions, I guess, for the remainder of 2020? And how could you foresee the rest of the year panning out?
Provided that we can keep our rate of infection of coronavirus at a manageable level, and I think we are at the moment, I actually think regional Australia will get a boost. I think international travel is a long, long way away, and people have been working under fairly strict conditions, and I think they'll be busting to get out and about. And so I think if we play our cards right, we can attract a higher rate of visitation to our area, and then while they're here, we need to sow the seed that maybe they could actually live here. Because we've now proven you don't need to be working in the CBD of a capital city to be connected. And the idea that you can live in a town where you actually can buy your own house, your kids can walk to school, you're 5 minutes from the shops, you're 5 minutes from work, and you're 5 minutes from sport, is got to be attractive. And so I think if we play our cards right, we can. If there's a silver lining in what is, a terrible pandemic, it will be that the regions can come out of this stronger than they were before.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think there's some real positive opportunities, and early feedback from the tourism operators that I've spoken to recent weeks since some of those restrictions have been rolled back, visitation numbers have been very strong, so I think that's a positive sign. Now look, if business or community members want to engage with you to learn more about, I guess, some of the policies or projects we've discussed this morning, or to learn more about your ministerial responsibilities or your work as the federal member for parks, what's the easiest way for them to engage with you?
Look, I always encourage people, whatever it is, to send an email. I'm easy to find. I won't read it out now. The email's incredibly long, but
we'll put Mark's contact details for his electorate office up on the Facebook
I'm easy
page.
to Google, and so I've got 3 electorate offices, one in Moree, my main one in Dubbo, one in Broken Hill, plus my ministerial office in Canberra. So I'm supported by an incredibly qualified and motivated staff that help me in those, but every email that comes into my office I read, every response that comes out I'm responsible for, and so I very, very rarely can't find time to meet with people, and so if someone wants to catch up and talk about an issue, it's not that hard.
Yeah, well look, Mark, thank you very much for your time. It's been a fantastic opportunity to learn a little bit more about some of those key projects you've been fighting for over recent times. But for our regular viewers, tune in next Friday, same time, when I sit down with Rich Evans, owner, local newspaper owner, and all-round community leader. But until then, have a great weekend, and we'll catch you next week.